Hello everyone, welcome in this morning. We're back again with another Newcastle United review show. A lot to get through in such a short space of time. So, starting things off straight from yesterday, I brought you a little update yesterday. It was only about 9 minutes long about Gallagher, Pulisic, Ramos, and many more being linked to Newcastle United. Today, I've got more updates on those players. So we'll go through them very. We're not going to fly through them today. We're not going to rush it out. I was just in a hurry yesterday, so we're going to speak a bit more in depth about them. So starting things off straight away is Christian Pulisic. So the only reason I'm starting on Pulisic straight away is due to the fact that it's going to happen in regards to Newcastle making an offer for Pulisic. It looks to be that the talks with Ramos went a bit quiet. I think these have only went quiet due to the João Pedro bid. It's understood that obviously we're going to try and pursue João Pedro. I think it's by the looks of the reports that I've seen yesterday and was informed of this morning. It looks more and more likely that we will push for João Pedro due to the fact that Watford are going to have to sell him because he's going to want to play Premier League football this season. So Watford's going to have to consider offers for João Pedro, which isn't too bad for them. So in regards to João Pedro, it's sort of just see how they get on and how they take things in regards to that bid. But I think, if I'm totally honest, obviously Newcastle are doing things strategically and they're not willing to overspend on players. I know a lot of people are saying it's not overspending. They're just solely spending what they think the player's worth. I honestly think Pedro will be through the door very soon. I think the fact that he was kept quiet for such a long time and then suddenly it was announced by Sky Sports News that these reports were concrete, it goes to show something. But I did a bit more drawn up yesterday and had a chat with another lad that I speak to and get a bit of transfer updates from on Twitter yesterday. So basically, it's understood that Newcastle United obviously took out a £100 million loan. This loan it can be used any way they want. This loan basically brings in revenue now rather than waiting until the end of the season, which is understood to look at it. You can look at it like this. So Newcastle technically have 100 million to spend in the summer. The only issue with spending that 100 million in the summer is what do you do when it comes to January? So when I did some drawn up plans and talked with someone yesterday, we discovered that Newcastle are going to probably have a little bit more in the transfer tub. Just due, obviously, letting players go. Look at we still have a few people on the books that still need to be offloaded. So I wouldn't rule anyone leaving the club. I wouldn't rule that out yet. I still think a goalkeeper is going to be leaving the club before deadline day. I'd be surprised if we keep all 4 goalkeepers that is in the club. If I'm honest, I think we'll either see Gillespie or Darlow go. They'll go to the Championship club, or Gillespie will go somewhere in Scotland, something like that. So we'll get a little bit of transfer money out of them. It's not going to be a lot. It will be something. So it will go towards something. We also have Jeff Hendrick, who also is in midfield, who's sat around for a long time now. I think I'd be surprised if he doesn't get moved on. I really wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't get moved on by the end of this deadline day, whether it's a loan or not. And I've just made a mistake because Jeff Hendrick's already out. So let's not talk about Jeff Hendrick. Mistake from Liam. But yeah, Jeff Hendrick, obviously he's out. But I wouldn't be surprised if we get some sort of like concrete deal on him in the future, which will bring money in hopefully in January to be spent. Obviously at the club, there's a lot of centre-backs as well. There's quite a few centre-backs in the club that need to be, I wouldn't say moved on, but there is a consideration that needs to be taken is how many players are you going to take that are defenders in the squad when it comes to naming the full. I think it's 25-man squad. So how many do you take into consideration of keeping in the squad and how many do you take into consideration of moving on? Because you can't really afford to do something like Freddie Fernandez. You can't really afford to send Freddie down to the under-23s. He's just not going to want to do it. So it's going to be easier to move him on than it is to keep him. So there is still players that Newcastle can move out to raise some transfer funds. So here's a big name for you who I have discussed in the past and we keep discussing time and time again. And I still think that he will be in the door at some point in the next couple of weeks before deadline day ends. Christian Pulisic. Christian Pulisic, I think he will come to the club due to the fact of it makes sense for Newcastle to sign this kind of player. The only reason I keep saying this time and time again is because the amount of shirt sales Christian Pulisic does is absolutely sensational. So Christian Pulisic brings in a lot of revenue for the club if we sign him. I spoke about this on Through the Black and White Eyes channel. You can go and check him out. He's a good friend of mine, Baz, over on Twitter. We talk now and again. Got a lot of transfer updates you can get directly from him. But basically, as I discussed on his channel, Christian Pulisic makes difference in regards to transfer revenue in the future. And it also supports FFP because the club raises funds through selling shirts. And when we were on this stream, a guy brought a very, very interesting fact. And I know I think it was it would have been like 2020 that he could only get these up. But Christian Pulisic, out of the likes of Messi, Ronaldo, and all the other big superstar players, Christian Pulisic was one of the main guys. He was second position for selling the most shirts. And that is all down to the American market. The one thing is that I like about Pulisic as well is his time at Dortmund. Pulisic was absolutely outstanding at Dortmund and he played as a winger at Dortmund. No, I'm not saying he doesn't play as a winger at Chelsea. I'm just saying that he was absolutely sensational at Dortmund. So, Christian Pulisic coming to Newcastle United, he would revive his career under Eddie Howe because we've seen it time and time again. Eddie Howe can really revive players' careers. Look at Joe Linton, for instance. There's a good example. Joe Linton was absolutely outstanding once Eddie Howe came in. He transformed that player from being signed as a £40 million striker to being a midfielder that I wouldn't take him out the midfield for anyone at the moment because he's just so composed at the ball. It's incredible. It's lovely to see Joe Linton like that. So yeah, Christian Pulisic, I wouldn't be surprised if he comes through the door. So we'll have to keep an eye on that one. The one that I keep bringing up multiple times now, and it still never seems to go away from media, still never seems to go away from any of the reporters' mouths, it is Lucas Paqueta. This man we've been linked with since January. He still hasn't signed for Newcastle. He is Bruno Guimaraes' really good friend. We've seen it when he was linked back in January. We've seen it when he was over in Newcastle having a kick about with Guimaraes in the back garden. The links went from there. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes in this transfer window, but we also need to remember one of two things. We have a lot of players to move on. To move them players on is the main element, I think, first for Eddie, just because you're going to overload the squad and then you're going to add more to it. When you get the players off the wage bill in order to raise the funds for the other players to come in. So, I would love to see Paqueta signed with Newcastle. It's not to say that it won't happen. I'm just saying I don't think at this present time it will happen until... I don't think we'll hear anything about this until deadline day. Comes deadline day, I think that's when we'll hear something massive on Paqueta. But this next week or two for Newcastle United, there's going to be a lot of pushing and there's going to be a lot in the media about who's getting linked and who could potentially come through the door. The one thing that we did see is João Pedro was kept so quiet for so long and then suddenly it was released by media. I know there's been a few other people on YouTube that's released João Pedro potentially signing for Newcastle. I mean, a lot of people get some really good information and it tends to come off. But this is why you have these videos. Obviously, in regards to Ramos, the striker Goncalo Ramos, who we were linked with for some time, there was apparently a bid going in here, a bid going in there. There was information I was even given that was really concrete about him signing. There was like a €30 million bid plus add-ons going in and things for him. That seems to have went quiet, all obviously down to the João Pedro. So in regards to Ramos, I think it's all solely down to where we can save money on players to then buy another player. So I'd be very surprised if we end up getting Pedro. I mean, not Pedro, sorry, Ramos. I'd be very surprised if we get Ramos, because I think Pedro will come in. I just think Watford will have to sell him. The other one that's been talked about time and time again, ever since we heard some news as well, I think it was a couple of days ago now, was the whole thing to do with Conor Gallagher. So Conor Gallagher was linked with Newcastle. It's linked to be a loan move with an obligation to buy. A lot of fans have mixed feelings about him. I don't personally have mixed feelings about him, because I think he really had a good season at Crystal Palace. I think he was in a squad to where he could do as best as he possibly could. He worked his arse off for Palace. He really did work his arse off for Palace. And I've said this over and over again. I think he's worked his arse off when he was at Palace. And he seems to be proving that he's a really good player. I think someone like him will want a lot of game time at Newcastle. I think we can give him that game time. Not as much as playing every single week, but I think we can give him the game time that he wants in regards of developing as a player. And I think he'd really, really thrive in that midfield at Newcastle United. Because we also need to remember that we've got Joe Willock, who plays in the midfield, and I absolutely love Joe Willock. I think he is going to be a centre midfielder that you watch this full season. I think Joe Willock will be one of these players that he will probably break into the England squad if he keeps playing the way he plays. Because I think Joe Willock is absolutely outstanding when it comes to the midfield. He's got a few nicks of where he needs to improve, but who doesn't? If you're a player and you don't need to improve, then there's something matter with you. You should always be able to develop as a footballer. Even like Cristiano Ronaldo, for instance, he's pronounced as world class, but he's still got room to improve in areas. I mean, in a lot of them, because you see Man United at the moment. But yeah, forget about that. Moving on to more transfers. So Conor Gallagher, wouldn't be surprised if this one comes in, but it'll be towards the end, because Chelsea really need a midfielder. And it's looking more and more likely that Chelsea will try and push for Frenkie de Jong because of his situation at Barcelona. It's understood that obviously de Jong wants to be away from Barca because of the contract situation with them. So if de Jong comes to the Premier League, which, don't get me wrong, I would love to see Frenkie de Jong in the Premier League. I've watched him since he stays at Ajax. He's a really, really outstanding player. I'd love to see him in the Prem and see how he gets on. But yeah, if Frenkie de Jong goes to Chelsea, then we'll see a bit more movement on the Conor Gallagher front. The other one, obviously, I covered Pulisic. The one reason I covered Pulisic is because Chelsea are making bids for Anthony Gordon, and obviously Pulisic doesn't fit Chelsea manager's tactic. You say it because he was on the bench at the weekend. He just doesn't get into that team, and if you're Pulisic, you need to be asking questions to why you're not getting in that team. There's something must be happening behind closed doors of Pulisic and the manager at Chelsea. So yeah, I really do think there'll be a movement on Pulisic in the next couple of days, if not next week. We'll hear some massive developments on that. But I still think Anthony Gordon will be one of the guys that will hand in a transfer request and end up wanting to go to Chelsea. I just think he's going to want to really, really, if he's getting out of these offers from high-end clubs, he's going to want to move. And obviously Everton's on a downward trend, so you tell me. Another guy that we've heard about a lot, and I mentioned him a little bit of time ago, was Callum Hudson-Odoi from Chelsea. We have been linked with like 4 Chelsea players now, and we also need to remember that we can't obviously loan in all 4 players because it's just not possible. You're only allowed to loan in 1 from a team. But yeah, Callum Hudson-Odoi was linked with a club. It's understood that it was a loan deal, but I can officially announce this, and I announced it yesterday. There is 4 offers on the table for players at Chelsea. There's 4 offers on the table for players at Chelsea. I can't tell you what the deals look like or anything like that, but when I was speaking to someone yesterday, he did say there's 4 offers on the table for players at Chelsea. So I'd be very surprised to see who would it be that was coming in from Chelsea. The only issue we've got with Chelsea is Chelsea are waiting to sign the players before they allow other players to leave. So I wouldn't be surprised on that front with Chelsea. So that makes a bit more sense in that front. If I was totally honest, there's another guy from, I think it's RB Leipzig that's been, no, not Leipzig, sorry, Salzburg. RB Salzburg, the young striker that's been linked with Newcastle again. I think it was spoken about ages ago, but I haven't heard anything on that front, so I can't really release anything to you on that until I've seen a bit more about him. But yeah, so the names we've got so far, we've got Conor Gallagher potentially coming in. We've got Pulisic. We've also got Callum Hudson-Odoi. We've also got Ramos. We've got João Pedro. Paqueta. There's a bit of a pool of players there. Not to say that they're all 100% concrete and that's who they're looking at. There is rumours there that support the backup of who potentially is coming in. There is rumours massively there. We know Paqueta because obviously January last year, still links in and around the club. We know obviously Conor Gallagher because Eddie Howe really admires Gallagher. Everyone's a bit mixed feelings in the Newcastle fan base at the moment to do with the likes of Gallagher and Callum Hudson-Odoi potentially coming in. But that's going to happen. It is. It's going to happen. The only reason I'm saying it's going to happen is just due to the fact that people have seen how Callum Hudson-Odoi hasn't developed as much as people would have thought because of his prospect and how he should have developed. But people also need to understand he's only 21. He's only 21. Like he's not even in the prime end of his career yet. He's got plenty of time to develop as a player. Eddie Howe will make any player develop. Don't get me wrong on that. I think Eddie Howe will really revive players' careers. But yeah, I think we'll see some massive progression from Newcastle in the next few days in the transfer front. I just think certain things will happen to where we'll see. I think we'll see at least two or three players leave Newcastle. I think that'll definitely happen. Whether or not the transfer fees or not, we don't know. But I still think there'll be a couple of players leaving Newcastle just to free up that extra space to bring the players in. I still definitely think Pulisic is my favourite to be coming to Newcastle. I definitely think Pulisic is my favourite to come to Newcastle. We've looked at right wingers for ages. I know we have Almiron, who I've said time and time again will have his best season for Newcastle this season. But Newcastle have said since the start of this transfer window, well, they haven't physically came out and said it publicly because it will give everything away. But we all know that Newcastle is looking for a winger. They're looking for a right-sided winger. They're looking for a striker. They're looking for a midfielder. The transfer policy changed because of Shelvey's injury. We're just hoping to just get a winger and a striker, and that'll be the market over and done with. But it's had to change because of Shelvey's injury. And obviously, if Bruno gets injured, they're a bit naffed in that midfield. Saudi Falcon has just jumped in there saying Almiron and Wilson are so weak. I completely disagree. Wilson and Almiron not weak. I think Newcastle United have one of the best seasons I've had in a long time this season. I think Wilson, if he stays fit, he's got the prospect of getting easily 20-odd goals. I think he'll be the saviour for Newcastle this year. Almiron, as I've said time and time again, he'll have the best season he's ever had this season. I just think there'll be a lot of changes in Newcastle that you'll see this year, and you'll go, "Wow, he's changed." I seen it when I was at the match in against Nottingham Forest. Almiron ran rings around Nottingham Forest. He was absolutely sensational. Almiron at Forest. He was fit. He was agile. He was everything. Saudi Falcon says, I have my own resources. They say Gallagher, João Pedro are so close to the Magpies. Yeah, I can also back you up on that one. Gallagher and João Pedro are definitely close to signing for Newcastle United. I heard of it yesterday as well. João Pedro, I got information on him this morning in regards to he's more close than anyone ever expected, and that's why Sky Sports News actually released him because they got more concrete evidence to say that he was one of the players coming through the door. The only reason Sky Sports News are so behind to obviously release this to the public is because of their reputation. They have a massive reputation on the line. If they get it wrong, they'll get slayed in the media. But yeah, João Pedro, he's very close. Watford are going to hold out for money. It's pretty obvious. They love him. The manager loves him. The prospect of him and everything like that. I think he's only 20 years of age and things like that. But the only issue is, I've always said that I would love to see Newcastle going for Paqueta. The only thing that throws me off more and more about Paqueta now, in my own personal sense, is the fact that he's Brazilian as well. So if Newcastle then go and get João Pedro, and they say they went and got Paqueta, they would have a total of 4 Brazilians on that side. If they have 4 Brazilians on that side, and all 4 of them Brazilians get called up for the Brazil first team, they're going to lose a lot of players. That's 4 players that they're going to lose. So it's interesting. We've got another one from Saudi Falcon. He says, it's really cool having Newcastle flags here in Saudi Arabia. We love Newcastle. When the games start, we are cheering in the CAF's houses and work for Newcastle. That's absolutely amazing to hear. Yeah, it's just different times for Newcastle United at the moment. Fans across the world following the club. But yeah, absolutely sensational. But yeah, I think the transfers have covered the day more than reasonable. That I think they will come in. Not all of them, but they are the links so far that I've got from my sources, not anyone else's, just my sources. If I find anything else more, you'll see them in the shorts. If I manage to get home in time and I've got enough time to record like a 20-minute live and things like that, you'll see them on the live. But yeah, I must go now because I've got to go to work. Thanks to everyone that's tuned in today. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There will be more updates on the transfer front coming from myself. If you want to join in the live shows and you want to chat away in the chat, feel free. It's nice to see a bit of interaction. But yeah, don't forget to leave a like on the video. If you're watching it back on YouTube, don't forget to leave a comment in the comment section of what you think about the transfers that are coming in. But yeah, one last question from Saudi Falcon. So he said, what is your expectation for this season? I did a video not long ago about my perspective and where I think Newcastle will finish. There's a lot of people that are shocked to where I rated Newcastle to finish. There's a lot I'll probably change my prediction now after I've seen the first game of the season. But yeah, if you want to, you can check that video out. I'm not going to spoil it for you. The video's on the channel. It's called My Premier League 2022-2023 season prediction. You can check that out on the channel if you want. Pop in, have a little listen, see what you think. Let us know in the comments what you think as well. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. And I'll see you in the next live, which will hopefully not be too long. But if I get anything, be in the shorts because I do have to work. But yeah, thanks everyone and goodbye.